of COVID. I think, you know, we've all kind of heard of these programs in the news, but I wanted to kind of drill down into the programs because each one is different. And in some cases, if you use one program, you can't use another one. So part of the biggest challenge, I think, to this is trying to figure out which program is the best for your individual business, because it varies based on your circumstances. So starting on the left, the Payroll Protection Program. This is the new forgivable loan that was developed to assist small businesses retaining their employees from now until June 30th. It's currently technically open to small business owners with 200 to 500 employees. And starting on April 10th, it'll be open to independent contractors and sole proprietors. I say technically open because when I tried to apply on Friday for my lab, my bank wasn't ready to accept that application. And they said that was because the rules hadn't been published by SBA until 9:56 p.m. Thursday night, which made it hard for them to accept applications at 9 a.m. on Friday. However, I can say that I just got a call from my bank right before this, and they gave me the link of how I'm supposed to apply and said, upload all your stuff. We're taking everything electronically. So things are getting better. I actually am able to turn in the application. So that was good. But my understanding is that by midweek, most of the banks are expecting to have those electronic links up. I've talked with lenders at Bank of America, BB&T, and Wells Fargo. They're all going to have portals. So check, if you bank with them, check their websites to see where the link is for that portal. Part of the reason banks are being slow on the uptake is that the lenders are actually lending this out of the bank's balance sheet. So what that means is even though there's going to be 100% guarantee from SBA, the banks have to put the money out first, and then they'll get it back in 9 to 12 weeks after the paperwork gets processed. So they also are getting a really low interest rate from borrowers and a pretty low processing fee from SBA. So that combined is not making them thrilled to do this project, do this program, but they are doing it. So that's all good for us. So basically, the way the program works is each small business that has 200 to 500 employees can apply for 2.5 times their average monthly payroll. So for example, if your payroll is $20,000, and payroll includes not just wages, but also some benefits that you pay and some of the taxes that you pay on those payrolls, employer side, you basically multiply that total payroll by 2.5%. Or 2.5 times. So if a $20,000 total of payroll a month, you could apply for $50,000, 2.5 times 20. The application form itself has a blank for the monthly payroll amount and then the multiplier. The rules say that participating banks have to verify those numbers, although the application form and the rules that have been put out don't say exactly what documentation will be required. My conversation with my lender and also with lenders at Bank of America that I work with have led me to believe that you're going to need to provide these documents. Your business tax returns for 2018 and 2019. If you don't have 2019 done yet, your profit and loss financial statements for 2019, and maybe your 2017 taxes. That's what's not clear yet. Your federal payroll tax return for 2019. Your payroll report for a period from February 28th, and then also, so kind of showing what your payroll was before the disaster started, and then your most recent payroll report. They're going to want to, if you include health insurance or other benefit programs that in your payroll calculation, they're going to want documentation of what you've paid for that. So for me, I got my insurance provider to give me a statement of premiums paid over the last 12 months, kind of in a running total that I put into my application. So my understanding from every bank I've talked to is that they want to deal with their own customers first. So your first place to choose to apply is if you have a bank that's an SBA lender already. And you can confirm that either on your bank's website or on the SBA website. You should submit your application there. If for some reason your bank isn't already a participating lender, then I would look for local lenders in your community that you might have a more general relationship with to apply. But for instance, all the big banks are definitely SBA providers. So for many of us, we're going to have a bank that's already an SBA lender. The loan is totally forgivable, which means you don't have to pay it back as long as you do what you're supposed to do with it. But you are also going to have to apply for forgiveness. It's not like it's just going to go away, but they haven't actually put out the rules yet for how you're going to apply for forgiveness. So we just kind of have to believe that they will do that in the fullness of time, as we say in the Virgin Islands. So it'll be forgivable if you spend it on payroll, on business mortgage interest, on rent, or on utilities in the 8 weeks after you receive the funds. The rules specify that for 100% of the loan to be forgivable, you have to spend at least 75% of the loan proceeds on payroll. And you cannot lower your employees' pay rates by more than 25% from pre-COVID levels. So like if you did what I did, like I had to furlough employees several weeks ago, if you bring them back prior to April 27th, you can totally participate in this program and not get penalized in the forgiveness part. Up to 25% of the loan proceeds can be used to pay things like your mortgage interest on your business building, rent for your business building, as well as utilities. Personally, I'm thinking the easiest way to track the spending on qualified expenses may be to deposit these funds in a separate account and then only pay those qualified expenses from that account. There's nothing in the rules that say you have to do it that way. I'm just trying to think of a way that will make it easy for me to document how I'm spending the money, because when I've applied for this program for my labs, and my goal is to get it 100% forgivable. If you end up using your loan proceeds in a way that disqualifies you for forgiveness, you're going to have 2 years to repay the unforgiven part, and the interest rate will be 1%. No interest will be due, no payments will be due for the first 6 months, but the interest will accrue during that period. So that would mean really your payments are going to come in the fourth quarter. You'll start your payments in the fourth quarter of this year if you are not doing a fully forgivable. Moving across the slide, the next slide is the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance Loan. This has two parts. The advance loan is something new that Congress did just for COVID, and then there's also the regular Economic Injury Disaster Loan, which has existed for other disasters and over time. Both programs you apply directly to SBA through a simplified portal on the SBA website. And in fact, the application link for both of these programs is actually in the notes of this slide, which Jen can put up into the comments, or I can share this presentation at the end. But when you go to that portal, it's a single button. It says apply for the advance loan. You're actually starting the process for both the advance loan and the economic injury disaster loan when you do that application. The advance program is supposed to deposit $10,000 into a business account. You specify in the application, quote, within 3 business days of successful application. Well, that's an interesting statement, because nowhere does it define what is a successful application. Does that mean you successfully transmitted it, or does it mean you successfully transmitted it and somebody decided you qualified? I don't know. I will tell you, I successfully uploaded an application on Friday, and I have not magically seen $10,000 in any bank account of mine yet. So I'm thinking it's leaning toward the, successfully uploaded plus someone's looked at it and decided you're a real business or something like that. But anyway, so the idea is that the money's supposed to be coming very quickly. The $10,000 advance loan is completely forgivable, meaning you won't ever have to pay that $10,000 back. However, if you also apply for the payroll protection program, the one I just talked about first, and you're awarded both, the $10,000 forgivable element will count against the amount of forgivable loan you get under the payroll protection plan. So in other words, let's say you took both, you got a $10,000 forgivable loan under EIDL, and you got a $50,000 payroll protection loan, then the total amount you would get forgiven would be the 50,000, not 50,000 plus 10. So you just have to keep that in mind as you're deciding what you're going to apply for. The loan advance program is actually an add-on to the existing economic injury disaster loan program. And that program is part of their 7A program. So in the 7A program, SBA qualifies potential borrowers. And by qualifying, I mean they qualify them financially. So despite the fact that the initial application literally will take you like 20 minutes online, you can expect that there's going to be a follow-up where they ask you to submit some additional documentation supporting both the amount you're requesting is needed for operating costs due to the economic injury, and also proof that you have a business that will be able to repay the portion of the loan that is not the quote advanced loan. Under the traditional EIDL, you can borrow up to $2 million. And generally the terms are 3.75% interest with a repayment term of 30 years. If you're a nonprofit, that interest rate, it looks like, is going to be 2.75%. With all of these things, the documentation is pretty similar. Tax returns, payroll tax returns, those kind of things. EIDL programs, small businesses are defined as 200 to 500 employees. And you can only spend the funds on operating expenses of the business. So it's a little bit broader than the payroll protection plan program in that it's not just payroll and mortgage and interest. You can also be used for ongoing debts and expenses of the business. But what it can't be used for is expansion. So it's basically, the idea is it's supposed to put you back in the place you were before the disaster so you can continue to operate. For me, when I was looking at it and deciding which one was right for my different businesses, it came down to this. If payroll is your highest business expense and the 2.5 times the monthly payroll gives you enough funds, that might be the best program because it's 100% forgivable. So, and as long as you comply with the rules, it's free money. If your biggest expense is something like rent and your payroll is a much lower piece of your business expenses and you qualify, the EIDL loan might be a better route to go because it gives you a little more expansive amounts of money and it gives you a little bit more in terms of what you can spend it on. Like I said before, you can apply for both, but if you do apply for both and you take both, you have to spend them on different things. So you would have to spend your payroll money, your payroll protection program money on payroll, and use your EIDL to offset other expenses that were qualified under that program. And the other thing I would say is you're kind of thinking about the comparison, and we don't know this yet because these are new programs. Generally speaking, the payroll protection program is supposed to move faster than your typical EIDL. Now the advanced loan, as I said earlier, is supposed to be 3 days. We'll see how that works. But regular EIDL process, because it's a 7A loan with SBA, is a process, okay? And what that means is it takes a while. And right now, as of last week, over 20,000 people or businesses had applied for an EIDL loan in the last 2 weeks. So SBA, I think before this, had a certain number of companies that help them review these applications. I think they're probably going to have to bring on some additional people, but that may also slow down the process. So that's why when I was looking at that, I also looked at the Florida Bridge loan, which I'll talk about in a minute, because you may need to bridge the time between now and when you actually get your EIDL benefit, loan package processed overall. So anyway, so I want to stick with federal programs before I go to that, though. So I want to already briefly mention, if you're already an SBA borrower, there's a couple of benefits you can look at. One, and this is a bridge program, if you're already working with a lender who's an express lender, which SBA express loans are a specific project that's type of loan that's supposed to deliver capital within 36 hours of application. Generally speaking, your lender has to be a preferred lender under SBA to actually be able to even offer this program. So that's the first question to ask is your lender an express loan provider? But if they are, they're doing this pilot program, which relates to COVID, which says you could go through the express application process, use it, and you could get $25,000 supposedly in 36 hours from the application date or complete application filing through your lender. And then that money would be repaid when you finally got your EIDL loan amount. Again, I've never done that program, so this is out there in the legislation. I don't know if it's going to work. My lender is not an express lender, so this isn't really an option for me. The other package is if you already have an SBA disaster loan. So for those of us who live in the land of hurricanes and floods and things like that, if you've gotten an SBA loan that's currently actively serviced, disaster loan, so because those have up to 30-year timeframes, that could go back many years. It could be, all sorts of different disasters. You're going to get an automatic deferment on payments that are due, starting from March 1 through December 31st, 2020. But there's a huge caveat to this that, if you're me and you're a small business person, you have to pay attention to. If you've got your payments set up on automatic payment, they don't automatically cancel those payments. So even though you get the deferral, you need to go in and cancel the payments before they're due, or else they're going to continue to draw those payments notwithstanding the deferral. And the other thing you need to know is that the interest is still going to accrue on your loan, even if you're not making the payments. So anyway, so if you're in one of those categories, those are extra benefits in the federal program. Okay, this is kind of the last slide on an official COVID type federal employee program. And this one is not immediate gratification, but I mention it because it ties into some of the other programs. The IRS has put in place like a suite of tax credits that businesses can take advantage of. The first one I want to talk about is the Federal Employee Retention Tax Credit, which is a tax credit you can take against payroll tax obligations. And you take it based on the payroll you pay between March 12th of 2020 and January 1st, 2021. The maximum amount of the credit you take, written in good IRS language, is 50% of up to the $10,000 in wages paid to each employee. So said in English, what that means is you can take up to $5,000 credit per employee based on payroll that you pay between March and December. To qualify for the credit, your business must have been partially or fully closed as a result of COVID or, quote, experience a significant decline in gross receipts during the calendar year. Since all of my businesses have been partially or fully closed, I haven't dug into what significant decline is defined as. But I think if most of us are in Florida, we're probably going to be subject to having been partially or fully closed. So you'll qualify. One important note is you can't take this tax credit if you get the payroll protection program. So, so going back to strategy, you need to figure out which avenue will work best. If you apply for both, and I should mention with all these federal programs, you can apply, but you ultimately have to accept them. So you should probably, if you're not sure what to do, apply to all of them, and then decide as you get more information what is the best package to accept, assuming you get approved for all of it. But and it's really just math. It's like which of these things will result in having the most money stay in my business. At the bottom, I mentioned the refundable tax credit for employers, which are related to paid sick and family leave. In the Families First legislation that Congress passed, they kind of expanded the FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, to include small businesses with 200 to 500 employees, to way oversimplify. It makes specific types of mandatory leave associated with a person with COVID or a person who has to stop working to take care of a family member with COVID. They get certain number of days at certain pay rates of paid leave. This is different than normal everyday life when small businesses are exempted from the Family Medical Leave Act. Other than that, I haven't really digested how that's going to apply to my business because none of my employees yet have been in the situation where they were taking that leave. But my plan is to talk to my accountant if that happens and I have to provide the benefits because the tax credits, they're refundable tax credits, and they're applicable in certain situations. And there's a lot of detail there. But hopefully nobody in my work world will get sick and I won't have to worry about it, but we'll see. And this kind of goes back again into the strategy concept of all of this stuff. What I just talked about is money into your pocket. The other way a business can survive this is to lower expenses. And while none of us want to think about this, I do want to briefly mention the changes in unemployment benefits that are available in Florida. Although it's been all over the news that Florida's unemployment benefit application system is broken, the online system, you can't get a pen, you're not able to submit, you have to get up at 3 in the mornings when there's not as much use on the system. I think they're working on fixing that, and they've added a paper application to kind of get through the computer issues that they're having. Florida is, the reason they're having such a high influx in unemployment things is because, there's like a 20% unemployment rate right now, and Florida is participating in the CARES Act increase in unemployment compensation. And this means that if you're a sole proprietor or an independent contractor, you may be eligible for benefits if you can prove how much you earned over the last quarter and that you're not able to work due to COVID. So this is a big change. Normally, those categories of workers are not covered by our Florida unemployment system. For those who qualify for the full benefit, including regular employees, the unemployment benefits are increased by $600 a week. So when you add that to what Florida's unemployment program usually provides, which is roughly 40% of an employee's wage, the actual unemployment benefit may exceed the employee's normal paycheck, which this creates opportunities for business owners kind of to make strategic decisions. If you don't believe that you're going to have enough work for your employees over the coming months, or will it make more sense economically to temporarily furlough those employees or permanently lay off some employees rather than to seek a loan for payroll protection? Some strategies, like I employed a strategy of doing a temporary furlough for basically 2.5 weeks. Other strategies that I've seen other employers use are reducing scheduled hours and therefore reducing the salary. Now, if you're going to take PPP, you've got to not reduce the salaries more than 25% of the pre-COVID wages. But if you're not taking PPP, you're not limited to that. So they reduce hours, reduce wages, just cutting wages in general, furloughing employees on alternating work weeks, i.e. so they work 1 week and then take a week off and get covered by unemployment and then work another week and get covered. And then like doing what I did, which is like a temporary furlough for a certain number of weeks. Keep in mind that these unemployment, taking these actions will have an impact on your unemployment tax account, a reemployment tax account that you pay for through regular unemployment tax that you pay for each employee. But if your work or business is drastically diminished, this option may work better for some businesses than trying to acquire a loan to pay people because you don't have work for them to do. So again, it's really kind of what works best for your business. Since we started talking about state benefits, I had to put some color in here because the slides were getting really boring. I want to touch on the Florida Small Business Emergency Bridge Loan. This is what I mentioned before about if you're applied for an EIDL and you're waiting, this program may be part of the solution. This is a loan offered by Florida through the Department of Economic Opportunity, and it's existed since the 1990s. It gets activated by the governor periodically whenever there's a disaster declaration. And it provides a source of funds to bridge operations until your other funding is obtained. So it allows you to borrow up to $50,000 if you qualify. And qualify includes being established prior to March 9th, 2020, having between 2 and 100 employees, having repaid all prior loans that you've ever received under the Bridge Loan Program, being creditworthy, and demonstrating you'll be able to pay the loan back using other proceeds like federal loans you've applied for, bank loans you've applied for, et cetera. The loan is 0 interest for 1 year, but then it jumps to 12% interest if you don't repay it within that 12 months. One difference in this program is that unlike, and I don't think I mentioned this, in the PPP program, employees are defined as wage pay employees to whom you pay wages. It doesn't include 1099 contractors that you employ regularly. But under the bridge loan program, a 1099 contractor does count, if you're regularly paying them, does count as an employee to qualify for the program. So that's one little difference. However, if you're hoping to use the PPP program to pay it back, make sure you understand the difference in how much money you're going to get in the PPP program, because you won't be counting those wages in your 2.5 times your monthly payroll when you calculate it. So I know that's confusing, but you have until May 8th, 2020 to apply for this program. You're going to be required to submit 2 years of business income tax returns, your payroll tax returns, and the individual personal income tax returns of people owning at least 51% of the business. You'll also need to submit financial statements for the past 2 years, interim financial statements for the current year for profit and loss, documentation of your monthly sales figures, and explanations of any irregularities in your credit report. The bridge loan applications are reviewed by a committee that's made up of lenders who are actually the same lenders that are going through the PPP process right now. So another question, just in terms of capacity of all these people, is if the same people are kind of in the process of reviewing bridge loans and trying to issue PPP loans and all of those kind of things, how's this all going to work? But speaking to a couple of my lender friends who are on the committee, they say they've got a plan and they're amazed by the number of applications, but they're going to get through them. So if the loan committee that I just talked about asks you for additional information on your application, you're supposed to provide that information within 7 days. So this is one of those programs where you're going to really have to kind of stay on it as you're applying. The application asks you to describe your economic injury that you've suffered as a result of the COVID pandemic. I think that they're wanting you to quantify that because so much of it is related to your financial situation. So probably saying my business has been closed, my average monthly revenues were X, and now I've made 0. You know, that's your economic injury. But obviously your specific circumstances will need to be described. In the notes, I have a link to both the eligibility requirements and the loan application for that program. You can file it online or you can file it in paper form, whichever is easier for you. This is another little bright light. The City of St. Petersburg has announced the Fighting Chance Fund. Applications are going to be available starting Thursday. The best part about this is that it's a grant, not a loan. So it is, if you've been impacted by COVID closures and you're a City of St. Petersburg business, you'll be able to apply for a $5,000 grant from the city. The city's put aside $6.8 million to fund this. So this is definitely a first come, first serve kind of application. On the slide, I've got the list of the types of businesses that are eligible. So restaurants, bars, nightclubs, retail, personal services, those kind of services. Your eligible type of business, you need to have 25 or fewer total employees, profitability for 1 year before February 29th, 2020, and a proof of receipt of payment of the St. Petersburg business tax for having had your business license in St. Pete. So I know there are a lot of people in St. Petersburg whose actual working facilities, they may work in St. Pete, but their office is or their business is headquartered in Pinellas Park. It may be worth looking to see if you can get a St. Pete business license before Thursday and take advantage of this. I also want to note that if you're an individual, so if you are a massage therapist or if you're an individual that's working as a solo proprietor, you can apply for $500 benefit under this program. The links in the notes gives you the frequently asked questions sheet from the city website. So I think that's as much information as I could find so far about this program. So let's say that you are lucky and for some reason COVID has actually improved your business, or you decide that your business strategy is not just to survive, but actually to go into a growth mode. For some businesses, this may make sense. I mean, we certainly are at the co-work space, still planning to do our expansion on the second floor. We're under construction. So I wanted to also look at strategies that'll support growth. So yesterday, the Department of Economic Opportunity in Enterprise, Florida announced a waiver of the 2.2% guarantee fee that usually applies for the microfinance guarantee program. I wanted to talk a little bit about what that is so that, you know, if you're looking for resources to grow, because this is in the category of not money to put you back where you were, but money to expand. Basically, the microfinance program is a guarantee program that provides loan guarantees to lenders that are extending credit to small businesses. So you would apply to the banks for this program, but you have to be an entrepreneur or small business located in Florida, employ 25 or fewer people, and generate revenues of 1.5 million or less in the last 2 years. You can't be engaged in speculative activities. You can't be a lender. You can't be engaged in pyramid sales. And you can't do anything that the federal government considers bad morally. So no selling drugs activities, no servicing otherwise legal products that are used with an illegal activity like drug paraphernalia, or operating a motel that allows prostitution, gambling, et cetera, et cetera. Basically what happens is you apply to the bank and the bank says, oh, your credit's a little iffy because you're a small business. The state provides this guarantee through this program that then makes you a better credit risk to the bank, which makes it more likely you can get the loan. But usually you pay 2% of the loan to Enterprise Florida for that benefit. Right now, you aren't going to have to pay that. And just in general, the terms of the guarantee usually are a 36-month guarantee. So I'm also in the notes, I've dropped a link to just a list of regular federal kind of small business supportive loan and guarantee programs, if you want to take a look at that. I don't think many of us are in the growth mode, but I thought it was worth mentioning because it's really all that whole conversation of strategy is how are you going to pivot out of this, and are you trying to stay where you were, or are you trying to expand? So now let's talk about free money. So grants. Grants are great because you don't pay them back. The best thing I can say about these resources is you don't have to pay them back. The worst thing about all these resources I'm about to talk about is that they're highly competitive and each one is unique. So there's a time component to having to put all this stuff together. The ones that I'm talking about are the ones I've identified thus far that my businesses may qualify for. I'm not going to discuss grant resources that are applicable to the restaurant and hospitality industries because Tina, my partner, on Thursday is going to be talking specifically about relief for restaurant and hospitality industry, and she's got that list, will be part of that conversation, and also support for displaced workers in those industries. So I'm going to focus on stuff that would apply to other types of businesses. The first grant is the Verizon Small Business Recovery Fund. This is being administered by the LISC, which is the Local Initiative Support Corporation, a national nonprofit. Basically that they fundraise from national capital providers and then redistribute that out through grants and loans. Verizon is funding their COVID program, which provides $10,000 to small businesses impacted by COVID. They initially provided $2.5 million in funding, but are adding additional funding, and now I'm about to sound like an advertisement, based on the rollout of Verizon's hashtag #PayItForwardLive, a weekly live stream from big names to pay it forward to small business. Viewers can tune in every Tuesday and Thursday from 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific on Verizon's Twitter, Yahoo, Twitch, and Fios Channel 501. As people support their favorite small businesses with hashtag #PayItForwardLive, Verizon is going to commit an additional $10 per use of the hashtag, up to $2.5 million additional dollars for a total of $5 million in support. So I guess my pitch is, even if you're not going to apply for this grant, go use the hashtag and put the money out there for other small businesses that will be able to apply for it. The first round of applications closed over the weekend, but they're anticipating that the second round is going to open in the middle of the month. So just the link to that program is in the notes, and you should just keep a watch on it and then submit your application as soon as you can. It's a really simple application, lots of fill in the blank kind of online boxes, It asks for operating revenues and other basic financial information, as well as your ownership information. It took literally about half an hour to do that one. So that one was not that hard. The next two are for women-owned businesses because, well, I'm a woman and I own businesses. The first one is the Amber Grant, and the second one is the Red Backpack Fund. The Amber Grant Foundation awards one $4,000 grant per month to a woman-owned business, and then once a year selects one of those recipients for an additional $25,000 grant. This program pre-existed COVID, but it's a really great program. It's been going on for years. The next monthly cycle closes April 30th. The application asks what you're going to use the money for to grow your business, in addition to all your financial and ownership details. So this is one where, again, if you want to be competitive, you kind of need to be able to tell a story of why you want to use the money and what you want to use it for. The Red Backpack Fund is being supported by Sarah Blakely, who's the founder of Spanx, and all women know what Spanx are. The fund will award $5,000 grants to women businesses impacted by COVID. The name and the amount of the grant comes from the history of Spanx. Sarah founded Spanx using $5,000, and she went to all of her big business meetings carrying her samples in her lucky red backpack. So because of that, recipients, in addition to getting the money, will also get a red backpack. And they will get an annual pass to Masterclass so that you can listen to her class on entrepreneurship. You know, as again, sounding a little bit like an advertisement, and I have no affiliation with Masterclass. An annual pass for Masterclass is like $180, and there's some really good content on there. So even if you don't get the Red Backpack grant, you might want to check out their content and see if that's worth spending the money to learn things from Sarah Blakely and other people. The application portal was closed yesterday on that, but it said it was just closed to update the software because it was getting crashed by too many applications, and it's supposed to reopen soon. So if you're a women-owned business, look at that one. Another one is the Hello Alice grant program, which targets businesses that are owned by women, LGBTQ+, minority and disabled business owners. The COVID $10,000 grant that you can apply for is a subset of a larger grant called the $50,000 Business for All grant program. This is a really, really long application. It asks you to describe your role in the community, your aspirations, why you need this money, how it fits into what you want to do to pay it forward. So if you plan to submit this one, just set aside a couple hours to actually write the whole grant application out. I want to mention quickly two smaller ones. GoFundMe. If you do a GoFundMe page for your coat to offset your COVID losses, and you raise $500 on your GoFundMe page, GoFundMe will match that $500. So your $500 fundraising becomes $1,000. So it's a small number, but it's there. And then Google has announced that if you are currently a user of Google Ads and a paying subscriber for Google Ads, they're going to put some undisclosed amount of credit in your Google account that you can use for ads over the next 6 to 8 months. There's no detail on how much that is or what that is so far. And my Google ad account, I haven't seen anything, but you know, it's there. So now let me talk about private loans. And my perspective on this is partially because I'm a lawyer, but it's also because I've just been amazed. Since COVID started, I have been inundated via email, via paper mail with offers for loans for my business. And some of them literally have had you know, interest rates as high as 27% and repayment terms that say you've got to repay these within every week, starting in 3 weeks. So, I mean, that to me is a disaster in the making for your business. If you're short on cash, you don't want to sign up for something like that. So my number one thing I'm going to say about private loans is read the fine print. Read the fine print, read the fine print. So, and I would also, I mean, when I thought about it on private loans, I'm going to look to my friends and family if I have to go this way. I'm going to look to my own bank, and then I'm going to read carefully any of these offers. In the notes, I have listed about 5 or 6 links to programs that looked, of the ones that I've received so far, kind of looked more credible. But you really have to see if they work for you. So look to see if the interest is fixed or variable, when repayment starts, how often payments need to be made, what the loan amounts will be, and then also if collateral is required. Some of the programs that I've listed, they're actually usually operating as venture capital funds, so they may want a piece of your business ownership as part of the collateral. So just pay attention and proceed with caution. That's really all I can say about that. But, you know, if it's the choice of that or not being able to continue your business, you know, maybe it's worth looking at. Okay, which kind of brings me to my kind of overall point, and this is really where I want, if we have people that want to talk, this is really where I want to talk about it. You need to have strategy for all of this. Part of it is my perspective because I have 3 very different businesses. So I've had to kind of look at this in a lot of different ways as I'm trying to figure out how to navigate it. But I looked for both. Initially, I looked for both funding sources, including the ones that I've described in here, as well as looking for extensions and deferrals and relief from my creditors and landlords. Basically, my strategy is to lower my costs in the near term as much as possible, and then obtain short-term financial relief that'll kind of bridge me, you know, and ideally some of it wouldn't have to be repaid. And then I'm going to try and pivot my business strategy to try and generate income in the meantime, despite the restrictions COVID, safer at home orders, and other things have put on my business operations. So in my labs, what that meant was making a really hard decision and furloughing my staff, which I love my staff in the labs, and this was, I mean, it was the hardest decision I've ever had to make as a business owner. But I'm glad to say, because I made that decision, I'm able to bring them back April 14th, and we're able to continue to operate. In my other businesses, I haven't had to make that choice, but I have been working with creditors, working with my landlords, working with my lenders to try and stretch out payment plans, get some deferrals, do those things. In the notes to this slide, I've listed the announcements that I have found from all the lenders and creditors that I'm aware of that have put out official statements of how they're willing to defer and extend and what you need to do to request that relief. If those lenders, so Citibank, I've got Citi in there, and Capital One and Ally, which does a lot of car loans, Bank of America, BBVA. If any of those are your lenders, you may want to check out that information so that you can see what you need to do to kind of initiate that process. And then there are other techniques that I haven't tried that I've read about that you know, maybe some of you guys have tried. Crowdfunding is one option. Selling gift cards for future services and memberships is something that I've seen some of the service providers doing to try and generate revenue now. I think you have to kind of balance that on how you're going to provide that service and still make money in the future, but it could be there. And then other people are putting out paid virtual content. Obviously, you signed up for this webinar. You see I have not, or this conversation. I'm not charging for conversations, but we are trying in the Rising Tide, we're offering a $5 a month virtual membership for access to our virtual community. And the plan is to build that content out so that it's valuable and that it will continue to exist after we're able to reopen our physical space. One issue we've considered in doing that is that while our physical co-working space is really local, I mean, our people obviously live within a pretty close distance from our co-work space, the virtual market isn't limited geographically. So that has kind of meant us that we need to think about what we're putting out as content and how will it be applicable across other geographic areas. A lot of my kind of crisis-driven strategy has come from my growth strategy that I had before crisis. So we had planned to do a virtual membership eventually. We just kind of sped that process up and made it a higher priority. We're also continuing to do the expansion downstairs, even though it kind of makes me sick to my stomach to think about opening in another entire floor when I can't actually open the doors of the building. But you know, we're already kind of a little bit pregnant. We have the demolition is done and the construction's in place. And so it seems like the best solution for us is to just keep going forward and believe that the doors are going to be able to be reopened, and there are going to be more people looking for offices because their businesses have changed. So hopefully that's all going to work out. It's a little scary, but hopefully it's all going to work out. And so my point is, if you hadn't spent a lot of time before all of this really thinking deeply about a growth strategy or where you're planning to take your business over the next couple of years, probably now, as hard as it is when you're thinking about survival, now is a really good time to also be thinking about growth and thinking about where do you want to take the business, because then some of the decisions you're making now about survival resources can translate into being the base for growth. Because I really think that the businesses that survive this are going to be the ones that are really clear on what they want and execute those plans kind of diligently and with persistence to fight the stress of having to do it all sitting in your dining room because you can't even go to your office. So anyway, so this brings me to my final slide, which is next week. Like I said at the beginning, this is a process that I'm going through for my businesses, and it's really not a fun process to be going on through by myself. So I'd really like to engage in conversation about what the new normal looks like for different business sectors. On this slide, I threw up the Nielsen Stages of Behavior Threshold, which tracks at how people are experiencing this crisis. This is really designed and was I found it in an article that's really about how is this going to affect retail. But I think next week, what I really want to talk about is if you look at number 6 on here, living a new normal, people return to daily routines, but operate with renewed cautiousness about health, permanent shifts in supply chain, the use of e-commerce and hygiene practices. So what does that mean for your business, for retail, for professional services, for personal services? How is that going to change how we operate in the co-work space? How are you going to change how you deliver products and services? What are customers going to want for hygiene? Like, what are we going to be perpetually carrying around Lysol wipes for the rest of our business lives? And how comfortable are people going to be in large gatherings or in crowded stores? Are we going to need to talk about relaying out some of our physical spaces to make people more comfortable? I don't know the answers to any of those questions right now. But I am kind of working on gathering materials that I can find to see what the experts are saying about that. And I'd hope that some of you at least would want to join in that conversation next week so we can talk about how that's affecting your business. So anyway, that's my presentation, which is a lot, but I'm totally happy to answer questions or have discussion about any and all of that or anything else that's relevant, really.
Thanks, Lee. Carrie did have one question that was kind of going clear back into some questions specifically around, I think, the PPP program, around 2 people minimum and S-Corp specifics.
Okay.
Carrie, do you want to clarify?
Yeah, I did apply for that small business loan, not the payroll protection, but just the small business disaster loan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually an employee of my own business, but I'm the only one. And then I have contractors working for me, subcontractors. So I guess my question is, how is that going to apply? I know you said something about, entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, things like that. I guess, is that going to disqualify me right off the bat?
It's for the PPP program, the federal PPP program. It's not. It just delays your ability to apply until April 10th. So they had 2 rounds of entry. So small businesses that have 2 to 500 can apply now, but starting on April 10th, sole proprietors or businesses that are like your situation where you're the sole employee of your business can then apply starting April 10th for the PPP program. And that was the distinction I wanted to make. In the Florida Bridge Loan Program, your employee includes your 1099 contractors. In the PPP program, it doesn't. So what that's going to affect is how you do that multiplier of 2.5 times your monthly payroll will be limited probably to the wages you pay yourself. So okay. 2.5 times that. Now on the EIDL program, I think that one is you have to have the 2 employees, but I will check that and get back to you to see if you can still apply under that one. I'm not 100% sure about that.
That one that you can't apply till the 10th. So if I already applied, do I have to reapply, or they just
if you've applied, you would not have been able to apply yet for the PPP. Oh. So you've probably applied for economic injury disaster loan through the SBA website. So that's the other one that I'm not sure about your application, but if you put it in there, great. I just don't know the answer to that myself, because all of my businesses have more than 2 paid salary wage type employees. But the PPP one, which is another application that you'll be submitting to your bank directly, that's the one that you'll be able to apply starting April 10th.
Okay.
So, and the link for the application is in the notes to this.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
And we'll make sure, Carrie, that Lee has your information to follow up, that she and I can, if there's anything there.
So just in general, how are people doing with all this? I mean, it's totally turned our world upside down. In terms of business, I mean,
Yeah.
my biggest client basically canceled a lot of the work just because all their employees around the world are working from home now. And that's not the whole story, but that's the one they're giving me.
Right. Well, I mean, that's the part that's been so hard is like, so for me, I was not, so just to give you an example, my labs are the public drinking water labs for the Virgin Islands. So like we're a public, like kind of semi-public business, but
Right.
we have to be able to go into all these private facilities, the condominiums, the banks, the whatever, and test the water. We couldn't go in and test the water. And all of these private businesses pay me directly. So they weren't going to pay me to not test their water.
Right.
And they were saying, we're closed, nobody's drinking our water, so it doesn't matter. So it was kind of a surprise to me. I'm like, oh, wow. So my business is done for the time being right now. So,
Right.
so those are the kind of things that, it kind of comes out of left field. And also, like, I've had like in our law firm, a lot of our real estate developer clients, because A, they can't get access to money right now, and B, all of their construction crews are slowed down or limited or not working at all. They're like, never mind, don't worry about that permit. We'll get that later. So, it's kind of been across the board.
And I think what you said about the pivoting, because I mean, one thing I was thinking before this is just changing some of the direction of my business and kind of going for a niche and everything. And now I'm kind of like full blown. That's what I'm doing. I'm going to just do what I was doing and even make a smaller area. I'm just going to do this one thing. I mean, I'll still do other things, but this is the way I'm going to market myself. So, I mean, it's that idea of pivoting, and that's, even though there's not as much work, it's kind of like, well, now we got some time to do some of that kind of stuff, like you said. So when stuff reopens, we'll be ready for it. And,
Yeah. No, I mean, I think, does anybody else had any thoughts about any of that kind of stuff with what you're doing?
Because, I mean, we can use this. I mean, obviously it's devastating, but it's kind of like, well, maybe it's a sign to kick my ass to do, the business a little different, and, and maybe use that as an opportunity to, do some of this stuff that I've been putting off forever.
Right. No, I'm kind of saying that as well.
Yeah.
Kathleen's got a great chat.
Go ahead.
What's Kathleen saying?
She said, when times are good, plan for when they are bad. When times are bad, plan for when they are good. Yeah,
that's a very good a much more succinct way of saying it than I've said it for the last hour. But yeah, that's exactly it. And that's kind of what I'm trying to focus on. And it also kind of keeps me from, the morose depression that could otherwise ensue from having everything you've worked for kind of get blown up a little bit. So.
Yeah, I mean, some of the stuff is clients are saying certain things, and it's kind of like, oh yeah, well, we'll get back to you in 4 to 6 weeks and this and that. And I'm like, yeah, right. You say that now, but you've said that before too. And so it's kind of like, I don't think, and literally some of my clients literally said, I don't know. They kept saying, I don't have the answer to that. I can't give you an answer because we don't.
Right.
Or they said, we're just doing the bare minimum on certain things, we're just concentrating on what we do best, and anything else that doesn't contribute to that, we're kind of letting go of.
Yeah. No time like a good CRM to flag those 4 to 6 week moments, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, our time is up. I will remind everyone that one of the things that Rising Tide is also doing, thank you, Lee, for doing this. This was a big deal. And a ton of work. We're also doing far lower lift conversations every day, Monday through Thursday at 11:30 a.m. for any of our digital members who would like to participate in a remote roundtable, which is varying from on topic to completely off topic, to walks in the park, to a variety of just sort of resources for a bit of those more casual roundtable type conversations for those that would like to have that outlet, because it can be somewhat daunting to kind of go through this, as Lee said, alone. So we're trying to do that. I do remind everyone, and I did send the link for the training on, I'm going to hopefully get it right, Thursday. I've been saying the wrong day of the week all week. The resources for restaurant and hospitality industry, which is also at 10 a.m. On Thursday this week. So if you'd like to join Tina for a conversation around specific hospitality needs and curiosities, share that with your friends. I've shared that in the chat as well. Again, we'll be doing a roundtable Monday through Thursday, and we'll finish off the week Friday at noon with the good news, in which Lee and many of us will be talking about all the innovation that quarantine has spurred. So that will be a bit of an ending on the high note, if we will, for the weekend.
Yeah, so can I just say that if you hear along the way of any good innovations or great, cool things that you think would be good to share for good of the order, if you'll drop them in an email to me. I'm trying to kind of put together a whole laundry list of things that we can celebrate that are going on, because I think a lot of, you got to keep your spirits up through all of this. And sometimes other people's innovation can spur your own. So, I mean, that's one of the things that I'm looking at, is looking at what other businesses are doing and saying, hey, that's a pretty good idea. Or, wow, can't believe that that's working, but great, I'm glad it is. So just as a, if you're in our chat already on Slack, you've probably seen one of our members is a drone delivery business, and his business is actually wildly picked up because he's doing restaurant deliveries. So, which is kind of cool with a drone, which, you know, here comes the future. I mean, I think that was on the Jetsons, you know, when we were kids, but anyway, it's happening now in downtown St. Pete. So anyway, so if you think of anything, and definitely join in. I think that one's at 11 or 12. What time is that one? It's at noon, right?
Good news is at noon on Friday.
Yeah, so it's at noon. So if you can jump onto that for fun and excitement, that would be great. And really, thank you guys so much for hopping on and having this conversation. And I hope we get to individually continue having conversations, and then also as a group. So I will talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.